Yes, sir.
All right, welcome, good everyone. We're good if you're all here with us tonight. We're going to call the meeting to order for the regularly scheduled governing board meeting. We're going to go ahead and start with a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. Roll call. Ms. Yes.
Governing Board President, Dr. John Sparks.
Here.
Governing Board Clerk, Sherry Lowe.
Present.
Governing Board Member, Denise Reese.
Here.
Governing Board Member, Raul Rodriguez.
Present.
Governing Board Member, Anthony Bruno.
Present.
District Administration Superintendent, Dr. Manuel Valenzuela.
Present.
Assistant Superintendent, Scott Downs.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent, Brett Bonner.
Here.
Chief Financial Officer, Lisette Huey.
Here.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the agenda.
Yes.
Mr. Valenzuela.
Thank you, President Sparks, members of the board. At this time, I would recommend your approval of the revised agenda as it was presented.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I just want to double check. Did we want to separate out or do you want to do it at the time?
Oh, I guess we should actually do. So President Sparks, I move to move item H from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. There's a board conflict.
Thank you very much. So my understanding is you'd like to amend the
Yes.
motion to move item number H. Say this right.
Gifts
So
and donations.
11H
Mhm.
to the regular agenda to be looked at separately, and the consent agenda will remain the same.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Now we need
Mr.
a
Rodriguez, are
second.
you okay with that amendment?
Yeah.
Very much.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So any further discussion? So we'll go ahead and do that just prior to 11. All right, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is approval of the minutes. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, sir, President Sparks, members of the board. You have in your packet draft copies of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting of the board way back on June 14th, 2023. And after your review and consideration, I do recommend approval of those minutes.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion? Motion has second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, the ratification of the vouchers, and welcome back, Ms. Huey.
Thank you. It's great to be back. And I just wanted to start by saying thank you to the governing board for all your love, your support, your prayers. They mean a lot to me. And I just really sincerely appreciate you guys being here for me at that time. And I'm just happy to be back. So I'm very blessed. Thank you. So it feels like forever ago. Payroll vouchers, I recommend payroll voucher ratification 24 through 25.1, new payroll approval of 25.3 to 26, and then also 1 through 3. Just keep in mind that the reason that there's two sets is because one is for prior year and one is for the new fiscal year. That's why there seems like a lot, but they're because we're right in between two fiscal years. For total payroll approval of $22,407,309.56, expense vouchers 1091 through 1098, and new expense vouchers for 1103 through 1114, and 3001 through 3012 for new expense vouchers and total expense vouchers of $49,790,605.40 for a grand total of ratifications and new vouchers of $72,197,914.96.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. Superintendent's report, Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Sparks, members of the board. Just a few items. I'd be remiss if I didn't begin by expressing my own good wishes of gratitude and welcome back to my colleague
Thank
and
you.
friend,
Thank you.
Mrs. Huey. Certainly been a challenging time, but definitely the answer to our prayers in her return to good health and well-being, and to have her sitting here at the dais with us again. So
Thank you.
best wishes for continued good health, Miss Huey. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We will have a presentation coming forward, but it's been a very busy summer. I've at last had the opportunities to visit both our high school and our K-8 summer school programs. They are running remarkably smooth. The high school program has upwards of 300 students. The elementary and K-8 has about a little over 200, 206 to be exact. And as you can see by a picture's worth 1,000 words, students are engaged, they're involved in rigorous activity, they're being enriched, they're having fun, and overall things are going very well over there. I also just wanted to kind of give you a sneak peek. We are working in the Sahuarita Winds Way to collaborate with the Green Valley Rotary Club, our own counseling team, to create an adult, like a mentoring program for our students to help them prepare for post-secondary interviews, scholarship applications, essay writing, just that college readiness process, which I'm looking around at the parents of multiple students who have gone or are going through that route. And those are skills that really are important, and they do help open doors of opportunity for our students. So I love our community. There's a spirit of goodwill, commonality, and I'm excited to see what this is going to bring. And with that, we are, as you can tell, if there was a summer, it's kind of gone. Next week's the 4th of July, and we're very excited about the promise of the new year. And at this point, I think that's all I had to share.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, governing board reports. Ms. Lowell.
No report other than I'm very, very grateful that Ms. Huey is back at the table with us. Nice to see you back.
I would just like to echo, definitely good to see you again and glad to be here. And then just want to put out to our students who are involved in the summer school program, both K through 12, that last week finished strong, and then be ready to go in another few weeks for the next school year.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that since I've new to the school board, being renewed in whatever way you want to look at it, I had never been to either Copperview or Christon Ridge, and I got a tour a week ago
Yes.
of both campuses. Got to meet the staff. I was thoroughly impressed. Met some old friends, made some new ones, I hope. And the students that were on campus for summer school were simply amazing, and everyone was engaged. For me, it was a great opportunity to see the next steps that took place after I was here, and to see that we're moving forward, putting the right foot in front of the others, so to speak. And to Lizette, welcome back.
I'm just echoing the same thing. Welcome back, Lizette. You were missed. You're back.
Thank you very much. I think what I always find intriguing about summertime is when you go around the district, and there's channel cleaning, and there's roof crews, and there's, all that stuff I don't think people realize takes place in the summer months to kind of prepare the sites to be ready for students and teachers and staff to return. But I'm just grateful that they're out there, but I also am always, it's hot here in the summer, so I feel working in the heat. I'm grateful for
Yeah.
their efforts. I
Toasty.
really am. and their willingness to, keep moving forward despite the 110-degree weather. And then I just have to say, I'm kind of excited to see the future presentation on the new Sahuarita art mural going up. I
Yes,
drove by
sir.
this morning. They were all out there actively painting. I know we'll get a presentation, but I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. It looks great. So, but I think I'm excited about that. So I think summertime, as you put it, it's really not. I mean, it doesn't really slow down a whole lot. It just kinda
Changes gears a little bit.
changes gears a little bit. Yeah, it looked great. Driving by, I was pretty amazed. It looks really awesome. So again, another great example of
Sahuarita.
upcoming Sahuarita collaborative, Sahuarita wins. That's pretty.
It's how we roll here in Sahuarita.
That is, I like that. So, and I'll say it again. Welcome back to you. We're grateful. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. No call to the public today. Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on to item number 7, the 2023-24 Beyond Textbook Agreement. Dr.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Sparks, members of the board and public. Beyond Textbooks is a partnership that we've been proudly engaged in with the Vail Unified School District for multiple years, 8 years. And this is a renewal. Again, the BT program is basically an instructional calendaring and instructional mapping program. It's our curriculum map. It's our instructional calendar. It provides us with flexibility. I think about it as like a skeleton. It gives us the body skeleton where we can customize it and we can frame the scope and sequence of what we teach, how we teach it, how long we teach it, in the order that we teach it. It also provides us with partnerships in professional development. It allows us the flexibility to make adjustments every year under Mr. Bonner's guidance. He works with faculty and leadership to make needed adjustments based on our review of data, on feedback from the different school leadership and from faculty, and to basically make it our own. It also gives us a chance to be a partnership with over 100 different educational entities from across the country, share ideas, pool resources on rep standards. In 8 years that we've been here, Brett made a point of telling me this is the first year that they've made any kind of an increase to us, even though we've been with them for 8 years, and we all know what costs have done in the last 8 years. And so it's, just so you know, it's for $48,000 this year, the partnership with Beyond Textbooks. And after your review and consideration, I do recommend approval of the agreement for school year 23-24 at this time.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'd just like to, was it $44,000 last year?
I believe that's about
Used
right.
to be 43.
43.
43.
Correct.
Okay. So about a $5,000
Correct.
change. First time in 8 years.
Correct.
And they give us a pretty sizable discount
Very much so.
off what they're.
It should be around 80,000 plus.
And I think, I've watched during my time the Beyond Textbook program kind of settle in to what it is. And I think when people ask me in the community what it is, and then also when I'm asked by educators too, kind of my perspective, and I don't think a lot of people realize, you say curriculum mapping and structure, but it basically allows the entire district to be on the same track. For not a small sum of money, but not an unreasonable amount for the amount of effort that goes beyond. And because we do adjust it, it's ours. It's not
Correct.
one they gave us. We
Correct.
make it match ours.
Correct.
And I think, maybe you could speak to this, that amount of effort that we get out of that, the meetings we have and the requests we make, I think there's sometimes a perception that we could just hire a person to, putting out there that a person costs significantly more than what we pay, just
Correct.
one. And so I don't know, maybe you can speak to that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great summary. We've partnered now with Beyond Textbooks for over 8 years. We use Beyond Textbooks as our framework for curriculum pacing, alignment to the state standards. And so each year we revisit our adoptions or renewals that we have in place. Teachers come together and we customize our scope and sequence for whether it's math, English language arts, social studies, and we pace it out to make sure that our curriculum is aligned to the state standards, and we have a pacing guide for grades K through 12 to make sure that the teachers know what standards should be taught by each grade level and the appropriate pacing to meet the end goal by the end of the year. There's flexibility, there's a lot of support. It aligns to our school improvement plans every year. It meets state criteria. It really keeps us all on the same page and our arrows pointing in the same direction, K-12 for all calendared subjects. And parents have access to it as well. There's a parent link, and we like to, again, be very open to what we have available. And it is also aligned to our kindergarten through 5th grade standards-based report card. So another group of teachers come together every year. We look at the scope and sequence of all of our adopted and renewed curriculum resources. It's mapped out on the BT calendar. And then report card-wise, what is measured or evaluated each quarter is reflected on that pacing calendar. So what's actually being taught is being assessed accurately. We do that every year. I hope I responded to your
Thank you.
question.
I think that's what I wanted. And
Yep.
it basically says when it needs to be taught, but it doesn't say how it needs to be taught. We
Correct.
still give
Correct.
teachers that.
Teachers have a lot of autonomy on the delivery of instruction, and we embrace that in our district culture. It really gives the what, the standard, the when, the timing, the how is really autonomous to that profession of being a teacher in our district.
Thank you very much. I think it's sometimes we vote on things and I think we all kind of understand what they are. I think it's just good to put that out there publicly. People understand more clearly. Any other comments or discussion? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. New business, the 23-24 fiscal year proposed budget document.
Yes, sir. President Sparks, members of the board, as required by Arizona State statute this evening, I'll shortly ask my colleague, Mrs. Huey, our CFO, to talk about the proposed budget. What I'd like to do is just make a few kind of talking points, thought points for you to ponder as she goes through her presentation. I think there's a lot of reason to feel confident and strong as we go forward into this year. One, I can tell you with confidence that the budget is sound and healthy. From a financial perspective, we are on a solid footing. And that's due to the result of a lot of hard work and intentionality. I point out just a few highlights for you to think about as Lizette goes through her presentation. One is there's been a shift in how we account for students from our neighboring district in Continental. They are a K-8 district, so by law, those students have the freedom to go to school wherever they like. They've historically gone here, most significantly to Walden Grove, and we're grateful for that. But historically, we've basically sent them a bill for those kids, and we don't get money. Now we're going to be allowed to just count them as I think they should be, as our kids. So that's you'll see that adjustment on the tuition. You'll hear Lizette talk about the inflation factor. We are budgeting conservatively with zero growth based on some of the economic forces that are at play with inflation and the housing market and our best projections. And of course, that's always adjustable. And we hope we adjust it in the favorable, because I think there are trends that we believe we will grow, but we budget conservatively. We did receive from the state, besides the inflation, a one-time infusion of money, which is very much appreciated, but we also know that those monies are not sustainable. So we treat them with care and caution. You'll also hear Lizette talk about the M&O override, which has some unique nuances that are different than you might say, why did that go up, but that didn't? And she can explain that a little bit. We always strive to carry a healthy carry forward. It's our buffer against unforeseen emergencies, and it ensures or helps to ensure the likelihood of our ability to keep the district operating smoothly and successfully, even with unpredicted or disruptive times. And she'll tell you about DAA, and there were some shifts regarding logistics, supply chains that you might be able to comment about as well. So Lizette, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. Valenzuela. Tonight, before I start the presentation, I just wanted to thank Dr. V for his patience, especially during the busiest time for the business services. This is the craziest time as we're ending an old year and starting a new year. And to my colleague, Betsy Palacios, who's also been, going through the process and can you add this to the board agenda? Can you do this? And those kind of things when I'm gone. Christina Martin for pinch hitting for me. I mean, I know she did a great job and I'm very glad that she's and so a lot of that there's a lot of those pieces have come into what I'm proposing tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started on the next slide, please. If you want to click it again. So I think you've seen this before. We're always somewhat working on 3 years worth of budget capacity. The first one is our 2022. I know that it seems a long time ago and we closed our books a long time ago, but the state still allows for some adjustments in their calculation. We haven't seen any that's not in our favor. It's usually a little bit of a buffer interest and things of that nature that come later, significantly later, 3 years later sometimes. But it's been in our favor. And so we're working on closing the 2022. And then also the 2023, we're currently closing out our books as of 6:30. We'll be done. We'll be paying some items off. We'll be in the encumbrance period through August. And so we still have some time to pay some of those bills until we need to start preparing for the AFR, the annual financial report in October. Additionally, we're always looking at 2024, which is what I'm presenting to you today as our proposed budget summary. Next slide. It kind of went, there we go. Thank you. Sorry, Betsy. The next slide is just, I wanted to kind of give you a, how do you say this, kind of a footprint of what all the funding formulas go into the budget. There's the equalization formula. There's so many different formulas that go into the final budget. So we have the equalization, the base level support, the teacher index, the transportation, tuition, our carry forward. That's always an adjusted amount. We start with a conservative amount, and if we end the year better, then we can add it to the revised budget. As you can see, these are just a few of the calculations that go into our financial reports, but I wanted just to let you know it's not one solid, just this times this equals that. It's actually a group of different formulas that go into our calculation. Next slide. So with our M&O based funding formula, and this is just quick, pretty simplistic, as best as I can put it, as simple as possible. Our M&O is based off of this is our current year weighted ADM, and we multiply that by our base level support, which did go up with inflation. And then also we multiply that by our TEI, which is our teacher index, experience index. That calculates into the BSL, which is our base level support, and then we're able to add our TRCL, which is our transportation revenue control limit. That means miles, that means how many students come onto, how many students we transport, which means that we come up with our revenue control limit. Next slide. In addition, we're able to add additional adjustments to our formula, meaning if we had overrides, which we're very grateful, we have our DAA override, which you'll see in the final presentation, and then also our M&O override that we have at 14%. And that can vary based off of if our budget goes up, then that typically has, that makes our override go up as well. So you have your override, you have any tuition revenues, and I'm grateful that as a state, the legislature changed that process. It's a long, drawn-out process, and it's nice just to claim the students just directly as they appear in our school. Other adjustments are energy savings. We did do our solar energy, our water energy management, and that's also included in here. And then also if we decided to, at the beginning of the year, to move district additional assistance to maintenance and operation or vice versa, we have that opportunity to do at the beginning of the year. I'm not proposing that at this time, but that is one option that we have. Also, we get to add our 2016 Proposition 123, and then also our projected carry forward. Basically, what I do is I look to see how much money is not encumbered in current year and how much bills we still have to pay, and give a conservative dollar value for the projected carry forward, which equals our maintenance and operation allocation. But did I make your head hurt? Just a little bit, right? I'm often asked what goes into our maintenance and operation, and what can we pay out of that? And I try to do it as simple as I try to explain it as simple as possible. It goes 90% of it is for people. It's all of our staff, it's their salaries, it's their benefits, and it's about 90% of our budget. The other items are utilities, water, electricity, our transportation's also included in that, and then we have some money for supplies, so classroom supplies. So once we jumble all of that information up, I have before you is the proposed 2024 budget summary, and I'll start at the top with our base revenue control limit. And so basically what I do here is I compare where we ended last year, our revised budget for 2023, and compare it to what I'm proposing this year. And so what I'm proposing is our base revenue control limit at $139,540, and then our transportation revenue control limit, that typically stays the same. It doesn't really change very much. You really have to drive a lot more miles to increase that funding capacity. And at this time, it varies just a little bit. We are increasing our miles and we are increasing student transportation, but it's not enough to increase that transportation level. And you'll see that across the state.
Listen, I'm just curious, does the number of kids you transport also go into that formula, or is it strictly miles based?
It's not just miles based, but it does include how many students we transport, but the majority of the calculation is miles.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So we add both of those up and come up with our revenue control limit, and I'm proposing a $43,727,553, which is an increase at about $2.8 million from prior year. And like Dr. Valenzuela mentioned, that does include their flat enrollment projections, and about 250 Continental students is what I'm projecting, just kind of taking what their 8th grade enrollment look like and their incoming freshmen. In addition to that, our adjustments, like I mentioned, we're able to add adjustments to our maintenance and operation budget. And so our override is based off of prior year ADM. So the difference of why you're not seeing an additional, a large dollar increase in that override, it's because of our Continental elementary students. We're able to count them in our base revenue control limit for this year, but for our override, because it's prior year, we're not able to use that in the calculation this year. We will, however, be able to do it next year. So that's it. It's a plus. But mind you that all along, we've never been able to include them even in the past. So that will be a nice change for the future. Our tuition, again, that's why you're going to see the decrease, not because we lost tuition, but mainly because we're able to count them directly and I don't have to bill for them anymore. Other adjustments, there are none. Our Proposition 123, that will sunset in 2026, but that is going up just a tad, about $425,000. So that's about $88. We'll take it all. And then we also have our 2024, like Dr. Valenzuela mentioned, our one-time funding allocation, which was great. It's about $1.7 million, and that is included into our budget calculation. Again, it's only one time, so we have to be careful not to attach it to ongoing costs. Okay. Next, we have our M&O transfer to energy and water savings. Because we have the energy management program going on, we do have to take that off the top. So they want to make sure that that payment is done right away off the top from our budget. And so that did increase a little bit, and that will continue to increase just because that's the way the amortization schedule looks like. And it's just a little bit each year. So that went up about $35,000. And that brings our total M&O allocation of $50,578,887 before our carry forward. Next, we'll look at our projected carry forward. Again, I just look at what our current budget is and how much of that is already allocated elsewhere until we finalize our bills. Again, that's in August. Then we won't know what our true carry forward is. My hope is that it goes higher, but if we have to pay bills and that's what we have to pay, then that will be, it won't go lower than that. So our maintenance and operation budget limit total with carry forward, I'm proposing $61,483,090. Are there any questions on that maintenance and operation? We'll go on to our DAA, which is District Additional Assistance, and the funding formula for that is prior year ADM. So you hear all the talk about current year ADM and you know the calculations that everything's current year. Well, it's really not. You can see the overrides are not, and neither is our District Additional Assistance. It's based off of prior year. So prior year we did get an increase of ADM, that was nice, and so that's why you'll see that in the calculation. And the funding formula did change a little bit, $47 from prior year, which it did go up a little bit, but this is the same funding formula that we had as a state for the past 20 years. And so it's not going up like inflation's going up, but we'll take the $47 and hopefully, there's more to come, right? Next slide, please. The next item is with district additional assistance, we also have additional adjustments that we can make also in our DAA, which includes overrides, which we're very grateful to our community who did approve our $1 million override every year for 7 years. And we're able to include that. Our tuition revenues, again, that is going away. I still left it there just so that you can see the difference of where the monies were coming from before and where they're going to be allocated. And then other adjustments if we're moving any DAA and M&O monies back and forth, and we're not. And we haven't done that in a few years now. Our projected carry forward, we get to include that, and that equals our allocation. So like the M&O, like our M&O funding formula, there's also different factors that go into the district additional assistance. But I'm also always asked, what can we buy with those monies? Are they restricted? Can we use it for other things? And they are restricted. And there's specific things that we can buy out of DAA, which is furniture and equipment, transportation, land improvements. We can use that money for that. Technology, textbook adoptions, textbooks, library books, and instructional aids. And instructional aids are more like manipulatives and things of that nature that we're able to utilize out of DAA. So the final portion of the proposed budget is our district additional assistance portion of the budget. And we start with a DAA revenue limit of $3,492,295, which is an increase because we did grow prior year of $275,863. Our tuition revenue, that will be absorbed again, and that was already absorbed in our allocation. And then also our capital outlay override of $1 million. We're not moving any monies back and forth to DAA or from DAA, so that stays at zero. There's no other adjustments. And at this point, I just figured I'd leave out the interest earned until we can get that final calculation. It's roughly, usually about $6,000 to $7,000 a year. Our total DA allocation is $4,492,295. And I'm projecting at this time our carry forward from prior year at $855,447. The reason that you can see, you might ask, why last year did we have a lot more in our carry forward? And the reason for that was because prior year, which would have been 22, there were a lot of projects that we weren't able to finalize because either we couldn't get the items, the people, that was very difficult to get people here to get services that we needed. So what we did is we rolled those that funding formula to this current fiscal year, and we were able to complete a lot of it on this fiscal year, which is why you're seeing the decrease of carry forward. So it was actually from prior years. It added it together in 23, and we were able to finalize some of those projects and buy goods and services out of that. So for our district additional assistance limit, I'm proposing $5,347,742. And with that, Dr. Valenzuela, I'll turn it over to you unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Just a couple comments about that DAA, and I kind of had those same questions, and I asked them as well. But the 4.3.4, given the relatively slow growth of the last couple of years and with the pandemic, that is a pretty stable representation of kind of budgetary trends. And we usually, I'm looking at the carry forward, generally, we strive to keep close to $1 million in the DAA carry forward so that if a chiller breaks or a major system breaks, that we have an emergency fund to fix things. So it looks like it's kind of settling down to the norm. And so in summary, we are growing. Our budget is about, the proposed budget's about $61 million and about 5.3 million on the capital side. As I said, and I hope you picked up as you look at all of the different lines, that our budget thankfully is in healthy shape, and it's been the result of intentionality and resolve and focus. And so with that, it is required under statute that the board adopt the proposed budget so that the subsequent steps can take place leading up to the anticipated recommendation to actually adopt the budget by the statutorily required deadline, which I think is July 15th.
That is correct.
So at this point, I do recommend approval of the fiscal year 24 proposed budget as it was presented.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just want to say thank you. That comes with a lot of work to be that transparent and to work on a budget like that. So I appreciate all the hard work from everybody.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you actually for like spelling out each of those formulas. Even having been a public education teacher, having been involved in some level in public education for over 20 years, it feels like a moving target all the time. And to have it spelled out that way makes it a lot easier for, even myself, where tangentially I've been involved in it for so many years, but to where it really is, when somebody starts talking about public education funding, and I just try to resist rolling my eyes to the back of my head because it's so complicated, and this spells it out very clearly. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate the feedback.
Any other comments? I agree. I think we must have one funding models in the country. So thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing no more discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Very much. We'll go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Arizona School Alliance for Workers' Compensation Contract.
Yes, sir, President Sparks, members of the board. The Arizona School Alliance for Workers' Compensation, or the Alliance, that's as it is affectionately called, is our worker compensation provider. And just to provide the board and public with a little bit of summary, the recommended contract renewal is for $243,988. It is an increase of about $32,000, about 14%. And largely, in a nutshell, this thing is a function of your payroll. As your payroll goes up, you pay more, which makes sense. The more people, the more money you have into people, the more from a risk management you have to pay for coverage. So I will say that the prior year, the increase was closer to 20%.
That's correct.
So at this point, I would recommend approval of the fiscal year 24 Arizona School Alliance Worker Compensation Contract renewal.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have
So moved.
Second.
motion and a second? Any further? Any discussion? I'd like to, I think I want to make sure that publicly that we discuss the fact that the Arizona School Alliance for Workers' Compensation is under the Alliance, which is under the trust, which is under Arizona Revised Statute 11-90.
Makes it a pool.
-01, which makes it the pool, which sets up the trust and which also sets up the alliance, and allows them to operate. And I think I've watched the trust operate for a while now on the board, and I'm not gonna include it as part of the motion, but I really would like, as we pay this and agree to this contract, and I want to, and the next one on the agenda, $700,000 in that one, $200,000 in this one, to a trust that has, I think, historically clearly meant the pooling of property, fidelity, liability, workman's compensation, life, health, accident, disability coverage. That entity has now stepped out of that realm and is now offering two districts policy services, which I can't find anywhere under the law that allows them to do that. I can't find that it does not allow them to do it either. But model policy services don't strike me as agency pooling of property, fidelity, liability, workers' compensation, life, health, accident, disability coverage. And so I think I would like the trust, the alliance, to give us a written explanation and justification for why they are clearly moving out of 11-95201 and offering services that are not pooling of property, fidelity, liability, workman's compensation, life, health, accident, and disability coverage. I know that sounds, it's an interesting to stay here, but the reality is this is an organization that has a very specific task. And I cannot see how they justify, beyond vague connections, the offering of services outside their core competency area to include model board policies to Dysart and Cave Creek. I think it's Queen Creek. So why are they doing that? So I think that's we're paying them. There are other options for us to go to. I'm not suggesting we move today. I'm suggesting I'm going to vote to approve it, my personal perspective. But that makes me question, do they really have their core value and mission at heart? And I think as an entity, we should care about that. Because if they're stepping into arenas that are clearly outside of their given definition under state statute, I'm now worried, are they losing focus on what they should be doing?
Absolutely. And Dr. Sparks, I'd be glad, along with Mrs. Huey, to frankly grant what was really a request for information. You asked the question. The question I heard was, based on the statutory function of organizations of this type, to provide some feedback, some rationale for an explanation as to the initiative to move what sounds like beyond the explicit scope of the statute.
Yeah.
That's a fair question,
Yeah,
and we will find out, and we'll get back to the board.
And legal services are in here,
Sure.
insurance is in here, and I don't want a verbal one. I want it written.
Mm-hmm.
The trust should be able to provide that. They're a nonprofit that operates in the state of Arizona. We should be able to request that. Is everybody okay with me asking for that?
No, I agree.
I appreciate
agree.
It's
I
a
agree with-
request for information, and I will be glad to seek
Thank
that
you.
out and follow up back with the board.
I appreciate it. So that was my only comment. Sorry, that was long-winded, but
No, I think it's great to seek to understand. I'm comfortable moving forward, but as we move on, it would be nice to have that clarified.
yeah, thank you. And I had to read it every single time because it's pretty specific about what they do. Thank you. Any other discussion, comments? Thank you for letting us that. So seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Arizona School Risk Retention Trust Contract.
Another phrase that is a mouthful, so therefore we refer to them as simply the trust. But this is our liability insurance provider, and as President Sparks mentioned, the contract renewal is for the amount $707,110, which is an increase of $19,000 from prior year, or from a percentage point of view, it's about 2.7, 2.8%. And in a nutshell, the reason for that is it's a function of enrollment. As was mentioned, our enrollment did go up slightly. This goes up slightly. There was also an increase in prepaid legal services, not because the lawyers are raising their hourly rates, as I understand. It's because it's a function of, frankly, how much we use those services. And we try and be very prudent, but it was a busy year, as you know, and this work we do does have a significant legal element to it. So that was the reason for that. So $707,110. I do recommend approval of the fiscal year 24 Arizona School Risk Retention Trust Contract Agreement as presented.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to ask a clarification, and I apologize for not having done this before, but through this particular contract, then, does that mean that our teachers receive their professional liability insurance through this policy if they are employed by the district?
You know what? I would defer to Mr. Downs in regards to that question. Scott, do you have a comment on that? So the question is if they receive liability
Yeah,
insurance.
because the very first line, if you actually look at the trust liability form, it says general liability, including school governing board and teachers' professional liability.
Yeah, my reaction to that is that the coverage would like provide coverage, liability coverage to the board and staff in as much as whatever allegation is asked has a direct linkage to the execution in good faith of the board, as opposed to something that is a personal thing that involves you as an individual.
Correct. No, and so what I want to just say with this is thank you as a teacher who had to take out her own professional liability insurance for the year that she was teaching. And there are districts in this state that do not provide that for their teachers. And so, and they have to join either unions or other professional organizations in order to obtain that coverage. And so this is something that gets to be that weight taken off of our teachers. And so thank you for making sure that that is, if that's truly what this is, then thank you, because that's crazy.
I think we should get a clarification on the scope of that general liability. To
It
make
looks
sure
like
what,
it's 500,000, so that's
right,
what
I
I
mean, it
used to
looks
take
like,
out.
so be interesting. Scott will get back to us on that.
I can help. Yeah, and I can basically it does cover teachers and staff, especially when it's involving students. So they are covered as long as it's a school function, which is why you
Yeah.
see all of those requests that go, oh, we're going overnight with such and such students.
So as long
Where,
as it's a,
all of those things that the board approves, if it's board approved, those teachers and those staff members are covered.
so as long as they are acting in a professional capacity.
Yes, that is correct, which is why the steps of, getting board approval for travel overnight and things of that
That is
nature,
great.
fundraisers and things of
Okay.
that all goes into here. Once the board approves it, then they're covered. That shows that they're working as far as on behalf of the
Oh,
district.
that's great.
Yes. And also includes other things like our transportation, liability as well. Also our prepaid, like Dr. Valenzuela mentioned, our boosters and PTOs who register with our district and are part of our district organization. Those are also covered for liability purposes. If someone something gets stolen and things of that nature, that will be covered as long as they're part of the district's organization.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask also, on the last two items, just my memory is kind of running around a little bit. Is this out of what was once the Maricopa or Maricopa pool that was started for school districts about 20 years ago?
It's the same
Yes.
It's the
organization.
same
It is.
organization?
Yes,
That's correct.
that was its origins, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and so they came out of ASBA. ASBA started it, and so that's why some of the holdover, and it could become in my mind, a territory thing, in that, as you stated earlier, that we want 200 and some school districts across the state operating on different policy. So every time you move your student from one school to another, all the policy and all the numbers change because of the variety of people who are working with different providers.
Now, this portion of it is just the liability. It doesn't go into our policy. My understanding is that we're still going to continue with ASBA policy.
Correct.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, and that's ultimately what I was kind of like, why is the trust, what has prompted them for them to move out of their scope of what they're, and they operate as a nonprofit underneath ASBA, and ASB still has guaranteed seats and structure and control over in portions of. That's another one of my questions, right? So you do have a board for so you have a board for ASBA, and my question is why is that? Thank you for bringing that up, because it appears to me that you have a clear kind of directive. Any other questions, discussion? I appreciate that. Great. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, public auction items. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, sir. You actually have a public online auction items for capturing residual value for items that have exhausted their useful life. It was interesting. It's just interesting just because inquiring minds want to know. It's basically a big bundle of about 400 Chromebooks, which I think the minimum bid's $100. But it really does get to the fact that these devices, which have become such an integral, basic part of 21st century education, have become somewhat supplemental, consumable in their nature. They have a defined lifespan, and then we need to budget and plan to kind of phase them in and out. But it's a package. It has some other technology-oriented goodies on the palette, I'm sure. And so at this point, I would recommend your designation in accordance with Arizona Administrative Code, the designation of these items as fit for public online auction.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is sole source vendor amended list. Dr.
Yes, as the board is aware, because it comes up usually every year, districts are allowed to designate specific vendors as sole source providers. Now, there's significant stipulation and there's significant process that has to be undertaken to certify that the item, the vendor is really sole source, that there's some specific reason why they should be so designated. And so we have 2 items to add, to recommend adding to the list that have been deemed to meet that criteria. The first one, just by the acronym and how many letters it has in it, you might conclude, and it is true, that it was deemed to have exclusive capability. And if inquiring minds want to know there, that's the Preliminary Scholastic Aptitude Test, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, as it's affectionately known, the PSAT NMSQ test. And then the other one is level data. This one's interesting. This is the only state data validation system that is congruent and compatible with PowerSchool. So you have to use it. And so my recommendation, as allowed under Arizona Administrative Code, is for these 2 vendors, level data and PSAT NMSQT, to be designated as sole source vendors.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, the refuse removal and disposal services contract.
Yes, sir. Thank you, President Sparks, members of the board. As you are all certainly aware, many of the major service contracts that we enter into meet certain criteria. We have to go through a process every 5 years of going out to bid, or request for proposals, as it's called. This one has to do with the collection of our trash. It's due. It's a very meticulous process. If you look at all the attachments, it's scorecards and bids and sealed and deadlines and timelines and rubrics. And so before I make the recommendation, I'd like to turn it over. Lizette, any comment about this particular RFP? No, pretty
and
straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward, and this is information for bid because it's a hard bid. It's not something that, it's picking up trash, picking it up it's very structured, which is why it's not a request for proposal. It's called an information for bid. And so part of that committee was Mr. Downs as part of that committee, Robert Gonzalez, Magda Sanchez, and they evaluated the information. We did have 3 vendors that responded, or two vendors that responded, and the award, there was an agreement that the award go to Waste Management of Arizona. They're the only ones that fulfilled all the criteria and provided pricing. Correct, Mr. Downs?
And the only other comment that I would make about that is just because it is kind of unique that we had 2 responses. And granted, they have to put out a fair amount of work to appropriately dot all the i's and cross all the t's. There were 2 companies that put in, but only one, Waste Management, that met all of the requirements. So when you have one, in case you were wondering, it does allow for the recommendation to approve that vendor, as long as there is a clear determination that the scope of services and the price is within reasonable standards and norms, and that was the determination of the committee. So at this time, I would recommend the awarding of this contract. Is that what it would be called? Was that
IFB.
IFB, of this IFB to Waste Management?
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to new business, the 2023-24 School Resource Officer Intergovernmental Agreement for SHS.
Yes.
And take them one at a time. Or
we-
can we take them as a whole?
You know, I believe we can do them both because there's really one substantive difference.
The
It's
name?
the specific dollar amounts based on the uniquenesses of the situation. So I believe we can do them both. And I'm really proud of where we've come with the SRO. This program was initiated in one of my first conversations with Chief John Nolan when he came here from Santa Rosa, California. I came from an educational background where SROs were a valued, important part of the safety program. He came from Santa Rosa where it was the same. It started slow. We were able to get 1, now 2. And I'm excited to say, and you'll understand how we've been able to do it. It's been through a lot of hard work and effort that we're poised to hopefully go forward with our 3rd. But the SROs are a vital element of our school culture, our school environment, and our school safety program. They provide licensed Arizona peace officers, specifically from the local law enforcement agency, the Sahuarita Police Department, full-time on our campuses. And they provide law-related educational programs to our students. They provide a visible presence around our campuses. They establish rapport with our students, with our families, with our community. They engage students. They develop trusting relationships. They also are the primary points of service in regards to enforcement needs at the schools, which also supports strong relationships and the effectiveness of that function when it's necessary. In a nutshell, what the IGA says is that the SPD will provide us with a qualified Arizona post-certified police officer, and that we in return will pay for their salaries and benefits up to a certain limit. And so the neat thing is we've been able to go out and in pursuit of the Arizona School Safety Grants for additional funds, and we've been able to secure funding for both of these SROs. We used to have a grant that almost paid for one full-time officer, and we paid for the other one on our M&O. So now we're gonna be able to overwhelmingly cover the full cost of these 2 officers through these grants, which allows us to capture the funds that we were using before to hopefully expand the SRO program to the middle school, so we can identify an officer that can platoon and rotate among our 3 middle school serving schools, Wrights and Ridge, Anza Trail, and Sahuarita Middle School, and offer these same benefits at the middle school level. And Mr. Daly, Shane Daly, the city manager, along with Chief Nolan, have been wonderful. They are moving forward, and we are hopeful that we can actually achieve this objective within the course of this academic year, which is super exciting. And so with that, I would recommend approval of both of the 2023-24 school year school resource officer intergovernmental agreements with the town of Sahuarita for both Sahuarita High School and Walden Grove High School, as delineated under new business in item number 9.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I would just add, just on a per, that I have spent time on both campuses. They are a tremendous asset into the town.
Yes, sir.
So,
I agree.
excuse me. So I just had to add that I'm grateful that we have these fine individuals working, and hopefully soon a third. Any other comment? Sorry about that. Okay. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Very much. I think this means I'm doing too much talking. So we'll go ahead and move on to item, we'll call it 11, pre-11, which is item 11H, the gift and donations section. And vote on it independently before the consent agenda. And I'll just give a brief explanation.
Yes, sir.
Item H is the gifts and donations items, and demonstrates items that were donated to the district by various individuals and entities, and we are always tremendously grateful for donations. And so that has been pulled out and asked to be addressed separately. So can I have a motion to approve 11H?
So moved.
Second, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
I will recuse myself from voting.
Anybody abstaining say aye. Thank you. I remembered. So we have all affirmative, one abstaining. It's 'cause Mr.
I guess I do have a comment. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for all of the donations to the district.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to item 11, which is the consent agenda, Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, sir. Thank you, President Sparks. Members of the board, you have a list of items that are considered routine consent in nature and may be considered in one motion, and it is my recommendation at this time that you approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead, actually, item number 12, any possible future agenda item considered? We'll go ahead and establish the next board meeting, July 12th, here in this district auditorium at 6 p.m. No executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for being here.